I think definitely in the coming weeks and maybe even now on this channel, we're probably going to have to talk definitely a lot more. I mean, a lot more about green alternative energy solutions, especially now. And we laid it out just last week. Any of the alternatives that are being pushed forward by the climate skeptics or the green skeptics, as they're being now, the net zero skeptics, fracking is the big one that they're trying to push at the moment. But if they got fracking online, it takes about 15 years for any of that energy to come through to get to the grid to be put to use. So that's a 15-year gap where you're not producing. Same for coal. If you start and reopen the coal mines, you've got an entire mass organization just to drain coal mines. It takes about, I think, the estimate, because he's talked about this before, because Corbyn said, oh, we'll just reopen the coal mines. I was like, no, it takes about, I think it's like 6 to 7 years just to drain and make safe some of these coal mines. And that's even before you actually start having to think about producing the coal from these coal mines. And that's going to take an even longer time to get them producing. But the two things, or the stuff now that can have almost an immediate effect, first of all, nuclear. It takes about 5 or 6 years for that to come online. And that is, again, it's still a long time, but the amount of electricity that nuclear produces, more than enough to meet the UK's energy demands. Now, of course, because there's that nuclear waste element to part, yeah, I get it. But green alternatives, solar, offshore wind farms, tidal, 2 years. 2 years for it for start from being built to being completed to be able to start produce and put energy into the grid. 2 years. That is the quickest way and best solution to be able to do this. Now, to do that, you would have to, as we said, not crawl, but you'd have to sprint to all these alternatives to really get them going and get them online. And I think you could probably get them even going even faster if the government were to seriously invest in these alternatives. But of course, they're not. And again, this goes all the way back to David Cameron back in 2013 when he sidelined the idea of solar and offshore wind farms. So can we really trust the Tory government to really solve the energy crisis now? I don't think we can, but we're going to explore that now in this piece. So before we do go jumping into that, please do remember to hit that like and share button. And of course, down below, there is the subscription button. If you are new to the channel, welcome. And of course, there are the Patreon page and the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, the YouTube memberships are open as well. So as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way, even if you do just click the like and share buttons. So let's get on into this. This comes from The Guardian with the title of The Tories Railed Against Green Crap. So why trust them to solve the energy crisis now? In the grips of an energy crisis, gas prices are already due to increase by about 50% in April and will spike even higher later in the year. And while the Chancellor's modest mitigations do little to unaffordable bills, Boris Johnson is about to produce an energy strategy to try and cut reliance on Russian imports and speed UK generation, while he wobbles on fracking. And again, that report is going to be very, very interesting when that comes out. But before he boasts of some world-beating plan, hold on to this very salient fact. If the Tories had not blocked progress on renewables and insulation over the last decade, Britain would already be generating more clean energy than the amount provided by fossil fuels imported from Russia. Tories may recall those very sunlit days leading up to the 2010 election when David Cameron, as the green man of folklore, posed in the Arctic, very cheerily driven by a husky team, as he rebranded his party with an oak tree and a Vote Blue, Go Green slogan. His greenery was the environmental gauze to try and significantly an end to the very nasty party, And he did that job pretty well. He did obviously preserve Labour's green policies initially, but in 2013, Cameron panicked when Labour's Ed Miliband pledged a price freeze after the energy prices had risen by 37% in 3 years. Cut the green crap, Cameron ordered, and was duly splashed across the Sun's front page. The consequences, of course, were then far-reaching. Stripped out of green subsidies, causing the number of homes getting loft or cavity wall installation to plummet immediately by 92% and 74% respectively. Those figures have never recovered. He's scrapped the zero carbon building regulations, so 1 million homes have been built since 2016 with poor energy standards, and our energy bills are at least 2.5 billion higher now as a direct result, says Simon Evans of Carmen Brief. So remember, of course, Cameron trying to fix a wind turbine to his roof, and as a charming gesture to his Notting Hill flat in West London, which wasn't windy enough. But later, he then axed the green crap levy on energy bills that subsidised the wind and solar. That trifling 9% could have been replaced from general taxes. The industry says that onshore wind was on the verge of profitability when Cameron caved in to the Shire Nimblies and effectively banned it by allowing any objections to bar turbines. Virtually no energy was generated from new onshore wind farms, and solar was getting very close to viability when his own subsidy axe crashed into the industry, costing thousands of jobs. Stuck in planning limbo on 649 onshore wind farms and solar schemes that wait for consent. They could even generate more than enough power to replace the Russian imports, says Evans. And Johnson may very well greenlight them in his new policy, but we should remember the lost decade of clean energy. Onshore wind farms have had strong public support national for polling for many years, yet small groups in Tory seats often hold sway. And on the Somerset levels, I argued that with a tiny group of protesting against the 4 planned wind turbines by size for eyesore pylons, and of course the M5 and the Hinkley Point nuclear site, despite the climate crisis, have recently caused disastrous local floods. I find wind turbines beautiful. I like wings of the benevolent albatross sweeping across the sky. But beauty, of course, is subjective. Their purpose makes them magnificent to me. While anti-Greens hate them for their virtue signalling, those offshore wind farms have been very badly affected. An uncertainty caused by the Cameron subsidy axe ended the world's biggest offshore wind farm plan, the 4 billion Arctic array in the Bristol Channel. Still, local protests backed by celebrities and fight the larger firms in Suffolk are the necessary electric substations for a huge offshore wind farm that is planned not very close to the Alderberg. With the capacity to at least power 1.4 million homes. Johnson plans also need to include a very generous bonus to try and compensate local communities for projects that are being not only for the nation, but also for the planet. Labour's current pledges is a 28 billion green recovery, with Ed Miliband laying out his plans for a clean energy sprint, which we talked about last week, well, this week, in fact. And of course, for the huge expansion of renewables and insulation. That's the challenge for Johnson to actually meet. He has not yet spelled out the political difficulty of those staging points to net zero. His Green Homes grant scheme failed abysmally through incompetence, and a 1.5 billion fiasco that the National Audit Office has found has never insulated fewer than 10% of the homes promised. Of course, keeping his COP26 pledges means rejecting the frackers. Jacob Rees-Mogg in his cabinet, Steve Baker, and the loud noises, of course, of Nigel Farage. That's right. The fracking fascination is a mystery when it could take years for the gas to actually flow, if it works at all, without damage amid ferocious local opposition. So why aren't these mighty turbines just excitingly macho? The Renewable Energy Association CEO, Nina Sculpin, tells me that the companies she represents could construct more than a terawatt per hours imported from Russia within 18 months if these obstacles were unblocked. Even before the impact of the invasion of Ukraine, gas already cost about 4 times the price of the energy from the wind and solar. And UK wind farms are starting to repay the Treasury, earning more than the contract price agreed for their subsidy. Renewables are faster and cheaper than shale or new North Sea drilling, and would warp future investment towards fossil fuels. The frackers are plain perverse, unless you subscribe to the view that they're just hooked onto the big oil, or even Vladimir Putin. Bizarrely, of course, the Mail on Sunday did raise questions about the Frackov's funding and whether its campaign actually benefits Putin. So will there be energy rationing, as in wartime, or even blackouts as in the 1970s? Turning down the thermostats and, of course, reducing the national speed limit to 55 miles per hour can indeed avoid that. And, of course, road pricing needs accelerating too to the switch to electric cars. People will only make sacrifices if the plane is fairly distributed and the weak protected with far more generous warm homes discounts. This Ukraine horror drives the climate terror to its front pages, but February's ICP report does show that global warming has gathered speed, and yet easing energy shortages by hastening the global annihilation is the right strange case. The Tories have conveniently forgotten their own green crap did contribute to this current energy gap. So this is, again, gets it right completely, well and truly here. Over the past decade, we could have had a lot of green energy initiatives, but again, Cameron put the kibosh on them completely. And we wouldn't be in the situation we are now if the Tories hadn't been so short-sighted in their view of green energy. We are seeing now wind turbines, farm plants becoming more productive and more profitable. Same for solar as well. But the fact that Cameron axed all those incentives, we've lost a decade of what we could have had. And now was put forward by Ed Miliband as the title to the sprint to net zero that needs to happen, I think is a very interesting challenge. I don't think Boris is going to meet it, but we'll find out very soon in that energy security strategy. However, I think that he is going to try and satisfy both sides, which I think we will probably see a big miscalculation. He'll probably say, oh, look, we'll give all this stuff to green energy, but we'll also do this stuff as well, which I think is what we'll probably see in the report. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit all the buttons on your way out. And, of course, we'll see you all